It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Brad Miller as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives here in Yavapai County. And now, here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Paul David. Great to have you in studio today. G.R. Manera from the Department of Public Safety is here. He's a sergeant with them. And do you deal with just narcotics?
That's our main focus, but we do basic general investigations for DPS.
Okay, all right. But narcotics is what I think folks are probably used to hearing you. The classic, we stopped him on the side of the road for a traffic violation, asked to search, consent not given or given. That doesn't really matter anymore, does it?
No, we have so many dogs out there.
Yeah.
They're always available.
We got a good dog supply now. I remember there was probably a day when maybe there was no consent. What happened then if there was no consent to search?
If we didn't have a dog available, you let them go down the road.
Okay, but that doesn't take place anymore right now. I know we're off topic of what we're going to talk about today, but it just kind of clicked in my head. But now if I get stopped and I say, no, you can't search my vehicle, the next thing I know, a canine's coming.
Right.
And the canine alerts to the vehicle.
Yeah, what the Sheriff's Office has 4 canines, local PDs have them. We have 3 or 4 in the area, so there should be always one available.
Good, good. All right. What we brought GR in today to talk about, and we're going to do several of these this year, and GR has agreed to do that, is kind of focus in on one drug in Yavapai County that's affecting our population. Heroin has been a big one over the last couple of weeks. We had the actor, I can't say his name, I'm not going to say his name, but he recently overdosed on heroin.
Right.
And over the years past, I know Lieutenant Ken Morley at Prescott PD, I've done stories with him where all of a sudden we'll have heroin overdose, and then poof, it just kind of disappears.
Right.
But then a few months later, we'll see that come down the road again where some of the folks die from it,
Absolutely.
Others overdose, but they don't die from
it.
Right. So I wanted to have you come in and talk a little bit about heroin.
Sure.
First of all, tell me what it is. While you're telling me what it is, I'm going to hold this up. It's a couple samples of heroin that he brought with him today, and this is kind of what it looks like. And just go ahead and kind of give me an idea as to what heroin is.
Heroin is a derivative of opium.
Okay.
It's made from the opium poppies, which are real popular like in Afghanistan and those countries. They call that the, I'm trying to remember, the Golden Triangle is Afghanistan, Iraq. They grow a lot of those poppies over in that part of the world. But in the last few decades, it's been gotten real popular in Mexico.
Okay.
The difference between the Mexican heroin and the stuff that's over from the Middle East is the heroin from the Middle East is a white powder, almost looks like cocaine.
Okay.
What we see here is the black tar heroin, or it's called Mexican brown heroin. It's just a different process they use to make it, but they bleed off the opium from the poppies and turn that into the drug that's being used on the streets.
It comes from a flower?
Yes.
Okay. How are they making it?
In labs, they have to pull the bud, the flowering bud off of it, and it just kind of oozes, and the oozing that comes out of that is scraped, and that's the opium derivative.
Oh, kind of like a venom out of a snake tooth?
Pretty much, yep.
Really? They just squeeze it out of there?
Yep, and then they add some chemicals to it, some acids and things like that, and it forms the heroin base that they ship up to the United States.
Do you know the chemicals and acids, what they are? I mean, just saying those two things doesn't sound too good.
They vary, whatever they have available.
Okay. Yeah. Anything in particular that you can give me kind of an idea?
They'll use paint thinners and solvents, acetone, naphtha are real popular in extracting the opium from the poppies.
There you go. Because I think when we talk about meth in the past, I think the whole idea of using liquid Drano, flares, things like that, just really? That's in this drug?
Yep.
Who came up with that idea, you know?
I don't know.
It's got to be, what, chemists, scientists, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So the heroin you brought with us today, with you today, it's the black tar heroin.
Yes.
And I'm going to hold this back up again. The top one is 2.4 grams.
Yes.
That doesn't seem like a whole lot.
It doesn't.
But
it's $80 a gram, so you're looking at right around $200 of meth or heroin right there.
And that's just this top picture.
That's just the top one.
And for our radio listeners, it's probably about as round as maybe a dime.
Yeah.
And thick as, I don't know, a couple toothpicks stacked up.
Yeah.
Short stack of paper.
Yeah.
It's not much.
No, there's not a whole lot to it.
And then the bottom one down here, that's like the jackpot. Now it also seems like such a small amount.
It does, but you think about that, that could supply probably 10 users for a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what are we doing about it?
We're investigating them just like we are any other crimes. It has been a huge increase, and it hasn't been just the last few weeks, but we've seen heroin increase over the last 3 years.
Why?
My original thought was we had a lot of problem with prescription drugs. A lot of abuse with especially the Oxycontins, the Vicodins. Those are all opium-based or synthetic opiums.
Okay. So same effect basically as the heroin's going to have on your body.
Yes.
Okay. And we're going to talk about that as well, what the effect is that we're going for here when we take heroin.
Right.
Okay.
And we had such a problem with that. You know, a lot of doctors were overprescribing. All kinds of things were going on. But there's been a huge crackdown, especially with Matt Force and some of the local coalitions, to, you know, dump the drugs has been popular. But we were seeing lots of burglaries where people were going into people's homes and they were just stealing pills. Come
to think of it, yeah, we were getting a lot of stories from people whose, you know, their roommate would come in their room and take their prescriptions, or their purse was left somewhere for a little while and they were taking the prescription out and running off with it. So yeah, we did have a lot of that.
Yep, and kids were stealing from grandparents and aunts and uncles and parents and all kinds of stuff like that. There was actually a crew in Prescott area that was reading the obituaries, and as soon as an elderly person would die, they'd go break into their house because they knew they had all kinds of medications.
Oh, wow.
So it was getting that far advanced in getting to the pills. Since we've had a lot of the dump the drugs, we've educated more pharmacists, educated more doctors, and some of the problems that are going out there. That's kind of decreased, but the addiction hasn't. So they have to replace one with another, and then the cost of the pills, because of the decrease of the number of pills out on the street, prices have skyrocketed.
Supply and demand.
Yeah. For one pill of Oxycontin, you're talking $80. That's one high. Where $80 worth of heroin, you can get probably a gram of meth. That could last you a couple of days.
And you said with the Oxycontin pills, if it's 20 grams, is that right? 20?
20 milligrams.
20 milligrams, 40 milligrams, 80 milligrams, that's the price of the pill.
Right.
Jeez.
That's what they're charging out on the street. So you can buy, you know, and heroin's actually, the prices are starting to come down. We're seeing grams as low as $60 out there on the streets. But a gram can last a user, like I said, 2 to 3 days. So it's a lot more cost effective. Plus, heroin's more powerful. This has a lot more opium in it than the Oxycontin does.
Okay.
So they get a higher high and a longer high than they do with just the pills.
Now, how much of this little ball right here that you brought in, how much of that would I need to get high from?
Not much.
Okay.
And it depends on the user. As you use heroin, you build up a tolerance to it, just like anything. Meth,
just like anything else, okay.
You know, alcohol, whatever it is that's your drug of choice. But the longer you use it, you build up a tolerance to it. So in the beginning, you may just take a small little corner of that, put it in a spoon, heat it up with some water, draw it into a syringe, and you're good to go. But as you progress and you use the drug more and more, you need more of the drug to get that same high.
How are they transporting this stuff through the county, and how do you find it? I mean, well, obviously with the canine.
Right.
Canine's obviously alert to heroin. But if we didn't have the canines, holy cow, I mean, that is nothing.
Right.
I mean, that could be hidden anywhere inside a vehicle.
This particular heroin, I was involved in this case, was found in the sunglass holder of a Honda Civic.
Okay.
Luckily, the person got arrested for another offense, and during an inventory of the car, the officer found it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but it's everywhere. I mean, we find it on, you know, hidden on their bodies, hidden anywhere, and like you said, it's very small. This is older, so it's hard. But when it's fresh and newer heroin, it's very pliable. It's almost like Play-Doh.
Okay.
And you can fold it and mold it and put it into just about anything and hide it.
Wow, all right. We're going to take our first break. Okay. Department of Public Safety Sergeant G.R. Manera in studio today. We are specifically talking about heroin today, just to kind of give us an idea as to what it is, what it looks like, and how you're going to find it, and more and more. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
Know what?
What?
Since I got adopted, I've learned a lot about these humans.
I know. I mean, check out these two. It's Flirt City over here.
Yeah, I noticed that. It looks like my human is definitely into your human.
Oh, look! I think she's getting his number.
Nice.
Your human's got some sweet moves.
Takes after his dog. Oh, look, they're doing that thing where they put their arms around each other.
She kicked up a leg. It's like in the movies.
That's awesome. Looks like we're going to be hanging out a little bit more.
One of the areas still maturing in an adolescent brain is the prefrontal cortex. So when we take drugs, we alter key motivational circuits, changing the wiring needed for the cognitive function of the brain, until we can't totally deal with things like memory, thinking things out, and even learning stuff.
The signs are there. So is our help. Visit the partnership at drugfree.org for practical advice on coping with teen drug use.
When you're out there, there's no telling what you'll find.
I see it, I see it! Oh, look at you.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. Great to have you in the studio today. We're talking about heroin with DPS Sergeant G.R. Manera. We've gotten a little bit into the program. I kind of feel like part of me is jumping around a little bit, but
okay.
I've got so many questions about this stuff. I'd never seen the black tar heroin. And actually, my wife had mentioned the other day that she had heard that the stuff that comes out of Afghanistan is white.
Yes.
And the stuff out of Mexico comes in as the black tar heroin. That's the difference. Do they ship this in large quantities, or I mean, is it like these little packages? I mean,
it's brought up into the United States just like any of the other drugs. It's brought up in bulk.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually broken out into either kilos, just like cocaine, or into ounces, which are kind of a small baseball size, actually golf ball size package.
Okay.
And it's easier to bring the bulk across, and then it's broken up somewhere here locally and sold and farmed out.
Why would somebody want to do heroin? What's the draw?
I don't know. Just like any of these drugs, I don't know what the draw is.
Mm-hmm.
In some of the research, it's a lot of escapism. This deals with your problems because it kind of takes it away. But these drugs are just so powerful and so addicting. Once you get started, you just can't get off of them.
Now, you mentioned that when we started cracking down on prescription pills, heroin started to rise up.
Yes.
And I remember when we had a crackdown on meth in the county, I think heroin was also the drug that started to creep up as well.
Right. Once the legislation was in place for methamphetamine, where if you're caught selling, manufacturing it, and that's mandatory prison, 5, 10, 15 years flat, that word hit the streets quickly. And that's when we started to see a huge increase in the prescription drug abuse, and then that got to be so expensive it kind of led into the heroin abuse, is what we see a lot of. A lot of people started with the pills and have moved on to heroin.
How long did that take before we saw people switching from, by the way, this is the methamphetamine. How long did it take before people switched from the methamphetamine and then to the pills and then to the heroin? Are they just basically jumping from drug to drug as you guys come out and start cracking down this stuff? They
will. I mean, there's the hardcore methamphetamine addicts that that's their drug of choice, and a lot of people it's their drug of choice. They're never going to stop using meth. But once they started thinking, you know what, I could go to prison for this, they look for the next high. And a lot of them moved into the pills and then on to the heroin.
How is heroin used? Now, you said depending on my tolerance for this drug and how long I've been using this drug, like this 2.4 gram one up here. I keep going to that thinking, how could that possibly last anybody any period of time? But how much is this little 2.4 grams worth?
That's about $200.
$200.
Yeah.
$200 for a little chunk of
little
heroin.
nugget.
And then the other one down here, this larger 13.7 grams is
Just a little over $1,000.
Holy moly, that is an expensive habit.
It is.
How are they using this stuff, and then how much you mentioned that it depends on how much you use, that you have to use more and more and more and more,
right.
Which is like the same thing we've always heard about the meth.
Right.
Is the first time you do it, you may become totally addicted to it, but then you're always trying to chase that high. And isn't that what they're doing with all of these drugs, is they're always chasing that first high they get off of this stuff?
Yeah, they feel so good the first time they use it, and they keep adding more and more and taking more and more and trying to get to that same feeling, but they just can't quite achieve it. So they're always chasing that original high.
How would I be using this heroin, just in case somebody, you know, watch your kids and stuff? I mean, if the prescription pills are dying off, the heroin's here.
The way we see most people using it, and it can be used basically 3 ways.
Okay.
The first way that we see is most common is they'll take the heroin and they'll just take a little chunk off of that rock, and they'll mix it with a little bit of water and a spoon. And it's a typical teaspoon that you would have in anybody's kitchen counters or kitchen cabinets, but they'll bend it so they can hold it while they're heating it. It has to be over a flame.
Okay, so if you got bent over spoons in your house.
Right, and then they'll heat that up, and with the water and the heroin, it turns into kind of a really dark colored liquid. And then they'll put a cotton ball on top of that and take a syringe and draw it up through the cotton ball. They think that's taking the impurities out. It doesn't really do anything.
Oh, is that what the cotton ball's for?
That's what the cotton balls are for.
It's a filter.
Yes, they're using it as a filter. They'll use cigarette filters, they'll use cotton swabs, and they're trying to get the chunks from going into the needle and plugging it up as well.
Okay.
So once they draw up what their typical dose is, and then they just find a vein and inject it into their, typically it's in the arms, but it's in the legs, it's in the hands. We've seen it in the forehead, tops of the feet. It's anywhere that they can find a vein to get the heroin into.
Nice. And then you brought a couple of other...
yeah, one of the other ways that we've seen is they'll just take a piece of aluminum foil, just regular aluminum foil, and they'll put that rock of heroin on top of the aluminum foil. And they'll take just an average pen, and while that rock's on the aluminum foil, they'll heat it. They'll have some kind of a torch or something
as opposed to the spoon, okay.
Yeah, lit underneath, and as that cooks on the aluminum foil, they'll take a pin and they'll suck the smoke in.
Okay.
And you'll find pieces of aluminum foil that have just kind of trails, black trails, where it's melting and they're moving it back and forth and it gets hot, and they're ingesting the smoke that way. Okay. And it's a form of smoking it.
Sure.
Gets it into the lungs. This way uses a lot more heroin. There's a lot more waste because it gets on the aluminum foil.
Okay.
And you'll find heroin addicts will save these when they're really bad or they're starting to get sick. They'll do anything they can to try to get a little bit of fix in them so that they're not getting sick. And then the other way is we'll not with the black tar so much, but the China white is what it's called, or the Mexican brown, which is a powdered form. They can snort that.
Okay.
That's just probably the least common way that they'll use it.
All right. Wow, we got to take another break already. Okay. DPS Sergeant G.R. Manera in studio today. We're focusing solely on heroin. Hopefully we're giving you good information. I'm Paul David. This is Countywide. We'll be back in just a couple minutes.
When you're out there, there's no telling what you'll find.
I see it, I see it! Oh, look at you.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org.
They say that when you're facing extreme danger, your life flashes before you. If you think that's sad, consider facing it before you even have enough life to flash before your eyes. Car crashes are a leading killer of children 1 to 13. Deaths and injuries can be prevented by using the right car seat. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to know what is appropriate for each age and size.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Welcome back to Countywide. We have a few minutes left in the program. My big question for you right now, GR, is if I stop using this stuff, well, no, there's the withdrawals, of course,
right?
Okay, and there's the rehab and all that has to take place. But the thing about the heroin that I've noticed that I don't see or hear too much about, methamphetamine or cocaine or marijuana or even prescription pills, is the amount of people we have that just drop dead.
Right.
And that seems to be one of the scarier things for me, is that people are just using this stuff and then you find them the next day dead.
Right.
What is going on there?
Well, with heroin, like any other of the drugs that are clandestinely made, you don't know what the dosage is in that. I mean, this chunk of heroin may be 80% pure, whereas the one below it's 60% pure. You don't know that by looking at it.
Okay.
So when you're used to taking a certain amount and that has a higher concentration of opium, it's going to affect you, and a lot of that's overdose. We're also seeing a lot of the heroin is being mixed with other drugs. There's a fastball or a speedball where it's either mixed with cocaine or methamphetamine.
Oh, wow. That's
so you have these
dangerous.
two drugs just fighting each other inside the system, where
Right.
one's trying to jack you up and one's trying to bring you down, and it's all out war inside your body. And then they're also mixing it with things like fentanyl, which is a prescription drug for pain, and it's usually in a patch form that people will put on the skin, and it's absorbed through the skin. They're getting those patches and they're mixing it with heroin. That's mixing two opiate derivatives together, and people don't know that, and they're taking the same dosage, and it's just stopping their heart, basically.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing here now, because sometimes when I'll do these stories where we hear 3-4 heroin overdoses in a row, it's like, we got a bad batch.
Yeah.
Now, did we get a bad batch, or we just got somebody out there who got a super pure batch and somebody didn't get a pure batch?
Right. It depends on the opium levels. I was talking with Sergeant Gregory over at the PANT Task Force, and they are constantly responding to heroin overdoses. I think they've been to 13 or 14 this year.
Oh, wow.
Already.
Already.
They had 2 in one day within minutes of each other. And what they were finding out is that heroin was mixed with fentanyl. People didn't expect that. They were expecting just regular heroin, so they took their normal dosage, but they're getting more of the opium in their system.
Sounds like Russian roulette.
Yeah, system doesn't know what to do with it. Luckily, most of these heroin overdoses, the fire department's been there, shot them with Narcan and revived them and saved their lives, but that doesn't always happen. Several have been found dead in their homes, in parks, things like that.
Just like that actor.
Yep.
Needle in arm.
Yep. And that, I hate to say it, but that's probably the most common way you find a heroin addict that's dead from an overdose, is in that scenario.
What a waste.
Yeah.
That's a sad waste. Yeah, come to think of it, I look at the fire blotters that I get, and I have to say 3-4 times a week I'll see the word overdose on there. And I never call on those because I'm not going to do stories on those, but that's very interesting. Well, thank you for coming in and shedding some light on our heroin issue.
You're welcome.
In Yavapai County. So, and then hopefully we've taught you some of the warning signs and what to look for and things like that, what's used to ingest the drug. I'm Paul David. That was DPS Sergeant G.R. Manera. This is Countywide. We'll talk to you again next time.